Hello everyone, welcome back to Ace Wisdom. They wanted you broken. They didn't say it out loud, but deep down that's exactly what they expected. Your pain meant power to them. Your overthinking kept them in control. Your emotional chaos, it gave them oxygen. So when you stopped fighting, when you stopped explaining, when your heart went quiet instead of crazy, something inside them started to break. And now, that break is widening. Welcome to Volume 4, Episode 20, the next chapter of your glow-up story, where their mind games fail, and yours begin. If you've been following this journey through Week 3 and especially after Episode 19, then you already understand what most people miss. Peace is not passive. Peace is power. And nothing terrifies an avoidant more than the moment you stop reacting. Let's be clear, this isn't about revenge. This isn't about silence for the sake of mystery. This is about energy. Because the second your energy shifts, they start to spiral. Psychologists call it object permanence anxiety. Avoidants thrive in situations where your attention is predictable. Even when they push you away, they expect you to stay close emotionally. But when that pattern dies, when you detach with calm, not chaos, they lose control of the narrative. And the absence starts talking louder than any message ever could. Here's what's wild. They're not texting you back. They're not watching your stories. They're not even pretending to check in. But internally, they're rereading old threads. They're measuring their value through the mirror of your stillness. They're telling themselves they must be talking to someone else. How can they move on so easily? Wait, were they always this emotionally disciplined? That's when the panic starts to brew. But it doesn't explode. It simmers, quietly, privately, dangerously. Because let's be honest, this wasn't the version of you they expected. They planned for the desperate you, the pleading you, the let's talk you, not the you who now walks through life with unshakable calm, not the you who smiles without validation, not the you who doesn't flinch at their absence. You've become the one thing they can't decode: stable, centered, whole. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." And that's exactly what you're doing. You've stopped trying to get closure. You've stopped chasing clarity in their confusion. You've stopped mistaking their hot and cold behavior as a sign of love. And now your detachment is pure oxygen for your growth and pure torment for their avoidant patterns. That's what today's episode is all about. The 6 subtle, invisible, but undeniable ways your avoidant ex starts to break the moment you become peaceful. Because they don't collapse at your silence. They collapse at your evolution. No rants, no revenge glow-ups, no look at me now Instagram story games. Just peace, presence, power. And if you watch this episode all the way through, I'm going to reveal one secret energetic trait that instantly triggers deep psychological unease in an avoidant ex, even if you haven't contacted them in weeks. But before we go any further, let me take a second to say thank you to every one of you who's been here since Episode 1, to those of you who stuck with us through Volume 4, Week 1, to the ones who powered through Episode 19 last week and showed up here, hungry for more. You're not just watching a breakup series. You're watching yourself transform into someone stronger, someone deeper, someone more emotionally resilient than they ever gave you credit for. So here's what I want you to do right now. Subscribe if you haven't already. Turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Because trust me, the next episodes are viciously revealing. Smash the like button so we can reach more people like you who are tired of being manipulated and are ready to reclaim control. And if you're ready to go deeper, join the Ace Wisdom Channel membership. The link is in the description below. Inside, you'll get exclusive breakdowns, coaching calls, and unreleased tools to help you stay detached, grounded, and unshakably in control. And now, Before we dive in, comment the mantra, "Calm is my comeback." Say it for you, not for them, not for attention, but as a quiet declaration of war against your old self, because you're not reacting anymore, you're not playing games anymore, you're not available for confusion anymore. This is week 3. This is where their mind games fail and yours begin. Let's begin episode 20. Stay focused. It's time to witness their spiral in slow motion. Way 1. Your peace feels like rejection, even though you said nothing. Avoidants are addicted to space, but only on their terms. See, they don't panic when you pull back emotionally in a storm of drama. They expect that. They count on it. But when you go quiet without resentment, when you move on without bitterness, when you radiate calm instead of chaos, that feels like abandonment to them, not the kind they can control, the kind that sinks in slowly, silently, and terrifies them. Because here's the psychological twist. Avoidants secretly believe they're unlovable. So when you stop reaching out, they don't think, "Oh, they're just giving me space." They think, "Why aren't they chasing me? Have I been replaced? Were they just pretending to care this whole time?" Your peace forces them to face the very thing they've been running from, the fear that they were never enough. And it kills them because you didn't even have to say it. You didn't block them. You didn't bash them online. You didn't post some obvious thirst trap to win the breakup. You just became calm, and that's louder than any message you could have sent. Here's why it messes with their head. Most avoidants rely on a predictable power cycle. They create distance. You chase, they ghost. You panic, they come back. You forgive. That's the loop. That's the drug. But when you exit that loop without explanation, they spiral. Because now the roles are reversed. They're the one wondering. They're the one waiting. They're the one scrolling, replaying old texts, looking for a sign you still care. Why? Because avoidants aren't immune to pain. They're just good at avoiding it. But peace? Your peace offers no distraction, no drama, no texts to decode, no fights to replay, just emptiness, just that deep, unfamiliar ache of, "I might have actually lost them." This is where cognitive dissonance starts to rip them apart. They wanted space. But now that you've given it, it feels like rejection. They used to find safety in distance, but now they feel unsafe in your silence. And guess what? They can't even confront you about it. Because what are they supposed to say? "Hey, I don't want to be with you, but why are you so okay without me? Why aren't you falling apart anymore? Why does your peace feel so permanent?" They won't say that out loud, but that's exactly what's on their mind. The calm energy you now radiate acts like a mirror, and it reflects something back to them that hurts. You were always more stable, more centered, more self-aware. They just never saw it, until now. Because when someone loses control of your emotions, when their absence no longer creates urgency in you, they begin to lose control of themselves. So remember this, your silence didn't break them, your peace did. And this is just the beginning. Way 2. They try to re-enter casually, but your calm throws them off. Avoidants never reappear with fireworks. No dramatic apology, no tearful voice note, no paragraph confessing how wrong they were. They don't come back bold, they come back casual. A "how've you been?" A meme you once laughed at. A random photo reaction at 11:43 p.m. No real emotion, no depth, just a breadcrumb to see if you'll bite. And why do they do this? Because they're not ready to admit they miss you, but they're terrified you no longer miss them. They're not reaching out to reconnect. They're reaching out to reclaim the upper hand, to test if the door's still open, to see if you're still on call, to confirm that their presence still shakes your world. But here's what sends them spiraling. You don't react the way you used to. You're no longer rushing to reply. You're not giddy, confused, or typing out a 3-paragraph response. You respond with lightness, or sometimes not at all. No passive aggression, no dramatics, just mature indifference. And that is the one thing they weren't prepared for, because you used to give them emotional fire. Now you give them emotional ice, not in a toxic, cold way, but in a grounded, self-respecting way. The kind of calm that says, I've accepted the ending, I'm not angry, I'm just evolved. That hits differently. See, avoidants fear emotional intimacy, but they crave emotional control. They want to feel like they can still affect you without actually having to commit to you. So when they reach out casually and your vibe is peaceful, stable, and unaffected, it's like throwing a rock into still water and watching it disappear without a splash. Suddenly, they're the one left overthinking. Wait, are they seeing someone else? Did they really let go that fast? Were they just pretending to care before? And here's the truth. They weren't expecting you to glow up emotionally. They were expecting a relapse. But instead of emotional dependency, they found emotional mastery. Instead of the old dynamic, they're faced with a new version of you. Unbothered, clear, centered. Now they're the one sitting in the dark, phone in hand, rereading your last message and wondering, did I just lose the only person who actually gave a damn about me? And here's the ironic twist. They might even pull back again after testing the waters, not because they're over you, but because they don't know how to navigate this new version of you. The one who doesn't need to prove anything, the one who doesn't over-explain, the one who answers from abundance, not attachment. You're not cold, you're not rude, you're just done playing the game. And that destroys them, because for the first time they realize you're not waiting, you're not hoping, you're not stuck. You've outgrown the cycle, and now they're on the outside of something they used to control, and it burns. Way 3 is where they start watching everything, but say absolutely nothing. Let's go deeper. Way 3, they start watching everything, but stay completely silent. They won't call, they won't text, they won't comment. But don't get it twisted, they're watching everything. Avoidants are master observers, and once they feel your emotional detachment settle in, that's when they start lurking. Quietly. They'll view your stories seconds after you post. They'll scroll back through old photos and reel in memories. They'll read between the lines of every caption, even if you're just posting a quote about growth. But here's the thing, they will not engage, because engaging means exposure. It means admitting they care. It means risking vulnerability, and avoidants hate nothing more than feeling seen in their longing. So instead, they become your silent audience. And this is what tears them up inside. You've become a mystery. Before they had you figured out, you were emotionally accessible, predictable. They knew your next move before you made it. But now you're posting from a place of calm, not performance. You're not trying to make them jealous. You're not hinting. You're not using Instagram as a therapy journal anymore. You're just living that quiet confidence. It unnerves them. Why? Because your peace removes the emotional GPS they used to track you with. They no longer know how you feel about them, if you've met someone new, if you even care anymore, and that uncertainty, that's what drives them to stalk your content in silence. See, people think avoidants don't care, but most avoidants care deeply. They just process privately. They'll open your profile and analyze your photos like detectives. They'll listen to your stories 3 times just to study your tone. They'll even go through your followers, searching for clues, connections, threats. But they will never comment. They will never reach out, because to do so would mean showing their cards, and avoidants protect their cards like their life depends on it. Here's what stings the most for them. Your peace doesn't need an audience. You're not overperforming to prove you're okay. You're not using social media to send smoke signals. You're simply existing. And that drives them crazy because there's nothing to grab onto. No emotional outburst, no breakdown, no breadcrumb they can misinterpret as hope. Just presence, just glow, just you. And this creates a loop in their head. Why are they so fine without me? Did they ever really care? How can they look so calm while I'm still this confused? They start checking your page at night, then first thing in the morning, then multiple times a day. You've gone from being someone they took for granted to someone whose peace they can't ignore, and still they won't say a word because silence protects their ego, but it doesn't save them from the ache. So let them watch, let them analyze, let them spiral in secret, because if they're silent while watching you glow in peace, that says everything. And we're only halfway through the list. Wave 4 is when their imagination turns against them, and it starts to eat them alive. Let's keep going. Wave 4. Their imagination turns against them, and it starts to eat them alive. Your silence, that was the first crack. Your calm, that was the second. But now, it's the unknown that starts to crush them, because the more peaceful and composed you become, the louder their imagination gets. You haven't posted anything revealing. You haven't slipped up. You haven't begged for a second chance like they expected. So what's filling the silence now? Their mind, their fear, their obsession with what they can't see. And that is what begins to break them from the inside out. Avoidants are control-driven, not necessarily in the toxic, narcissistic way, but in the emotional, I need to feel safe by knowing what you feel way. So when you disappear into your peace, when you stop telegraphing your emotions, when you stop performing your healing online, they start asking themselves questions they were never emotionally prepared for. Are they seeing someone new? Why haven't they tried to fix things? What if they're happier now? What if they never cared as much as I thought? What if they finally realized their worth, and I was the one who held them back? Now their mind is working overtime, building scenarios, connecting dots, and creating emotional illusions based on nothing more than your stillness. And here's the sick twist. They blame you for what their own mind is doing. You didn't say a word, you didn't do anything, but because you're not giving them any reassurance, they start projecting their worst fears onto you. Suddenly, you're cold, you're heartless, you moved on too fast. They paint you as the villain, not because you actually hurt them, but because they can't handle not knowing anymore. This is where imagination becomes a prison. They can't ask you questions, they can't confront you, they can't admit they're even watching, so they're stuck, living in mental torture of their own making, and every day they don't hear from you, their fear of being replaced grows. Every peaceful post you make, no drama, no thirst trap, just centered confidence, adds fuel to their imagined downfall. Because here's what they realize. You were never chasing them. You were chasing closure. And now that you've found it, they've become irrelevant to your healing. And that reality is unbearable for the avoidant mindset. Because to them, emotional closeness is risky. But emotional irrelevance, that's terrifying. It means they don't matter anymore. It means they lost access. It means their worst fear, being unloved, unseen, unnecessary, isn't just possible. It's happening. And all of this, they created in their own head, because when you stop explaining, they start inventing. And trust me, what they invent is 10 times worse than anything you could have said out loud. That's why this is the most dangerous phase for them. The phase where your silence forces them to become the narrator of their own downfall. You don't have to block. You don't have to post. You don't even have to hint. Your peace speaks for itself, and their own mind does the rest. Secret mantra, revealed here. First to comment, it gets pinned. Silence is my shield. Peace is my power. Comment that only if you've reached this far, because way 5, that's where their regret starts leaking into real life. Let's go. Way 5, their regret starts leaking into real life, but they'll never admit it. They won't send the apology text. They won't admit they messed up. They won't say, "I miss you" out loud. But their regret starts showing, not through words but through subtle leaks into their behavior, choices, and patterns. Because here's what happens. Once your energy becomes calm, grounded, and non-reactive, they start reflecting, even if it's unconscious. The person who used to be their emotional safety net is now gone without bitterness. No chaos, no door slam, just quiet self-respect. And that becomes a mirror they can't avoid. So what do they do with that regret? They leak it through indirect actions, through awkward attempts to be noticed, through new habits that seem strangely familiar. Suddenly they're posting about healing and self-worth. They start dressing differently, like how you once suggested. They tag themselves at places you used to visit together. They share breakup quotes with just enough ambiguity to make you wonder, is this about me? But it's not about getting you back. Not yet. It's about coping with the loss of your presence without facing the pain head-on, because facing regret requires ownership, and for most avoidants, ownership feels like death. Instead, they try to reframe the story. Maybe it wasn't meant to be. We just weren't aligned. They'll be better off without me. All surface-level logic to protect them from the deeper truth. They're realizing you weren't the problem. You were the piece. And they sabotaged it. Here's where it gets real. Friends and family start to notice the shift. Your name comes up in conversation, and they go quiet. Someone asks, "Hey, have you talked to them lately?" And they brush it off with a fake smile. They might even bring you up casually, but there's tension behind their voice. That subtle pause before they speak your name. Why? Because your name still hits. And that hit is harder now, because there's no drama to blame, no blow-up argument, no betrayal, just distance. Distance created by their own actions, distance sustained by your emotional growth. And now their world is a little emptier. Their social media feels hollow, their victories don't feel as good, because they know you're not there to witness any of it. They lost the one person who rooted for them, who believed in them, who held space for their chaos without judgment. And now that you've found peace without them, it confirms what they've tried to deny. I had someone solid, and I didn't know how to receive it. They didn't abandon me. I pushed them away. They grew, and I stayed the same. And here's the twist. They might even start dating again. But every new connection feels flat, because now your calmness is the standard they silently compare everything to. They wanted to feel free, but freedom without your presence feels like failure. So they keep leaking through quiet reflection, through songs they post, through habits they adopt, through the way they suddenly start doing all the things you once inspired them to do. They still won't say it. They might never say it, but their regret is no longer just internal. It's leaking into their lifestyle, their decisions, their digital footprint, and most of all, their silence. Way 6 is where the spiral hits its final stage. It's not just emotional anymore. It starts affecting their sense of identity. Let's finish this. Way 6, their identity starts to crack without you to define it. Avoidants don't just fear intimacy, they fear exposure, because real closeness means being seen and known. And guess what? You saw them, you knew them, not just the version they presented to the world, but the one underneath the defenses, the ego, the bravado. And when you walked away with calm dignity, you didn't just leave a relationship. You left behind a mirror that used to reflect back love, patience, and acceptance. Now, It reflects absence, and that absence, it starts to crack their sense of identity, because no matter how distant they acted, your presence centered them. You were the emotional compass they secretly relied on, the one who translated their silence into safety, the one who offered structure when they were lost in their inner chaos. And now, they're floating, disconnected, unanchored, pretending they're fine on the outside, but feeling a deep emotional dislocation on the inside. See, the avoidance identity is built on emotional control, not just of the relationship, but of your perception of them. When you were reactive, they felt powerful. When you chased, they felt needed. When you collapsed emotionally, they felt secure, because they weren't the vulnerable one. But when you stayed calm, when you stopped needing anything from them, when you held your peace and disappeared into your healing, they lost control of the story. And now, their old sense of self, the one that defined them as unavailable, mysterious, too emotionally deep to be understood, doesn't fit anymore. Why? Because the person who did understand them, who did stay patient, who did offer space without pressure, is no longer around, and they can't pretend it doesn't matter. They try. Oh, they try. They distract. They date. They dive into work, hobbies, playlists, the gym. But there's an ache in it now, an emptiness they don't know how to fill, because they never learned how to regulate their emotions internally. They only learned how to suppress them through the emotional labor of someone like you. Now, stripped of that anchor, they're facing the truth. Who am I, without someone to run from? Who am I, when there's no one to perform for? Who am I, when I'm not being chased? It's not just about missing you. It's about missing the version of themselves that only existed when you were there to hold space for it. That's the breakdown, not the loss of the relationship, but the loss of emotional identity. And the cruel irony, they pushed away the one person who made them feel safe enough to be seen. Now all they're left with is the mask, and that mask is slipping. So if you're wondering whether your avoidant ex is breaking, don't look for the text, don't look for the tears, don't look for the grand gesture, look for the identity shift. When their vibe changes, when their energy dips, when their smiles feel forced and their lifestyle becomes performative, that's not growth, that's fragmentation. Because you were never the problem, you were the peace. And now that you're gone, the storm isn't just outside of them, it's within. The more peaceful you become, the more your avoidant ex starts to break. So now you know. It wasn't the begging that got to them. It wasn't the long messages, the closure talks, or the desperate "I miss you" confessions. It was your peace. The way you pulled back, not with resentment but with clarity. The way you stopped explaining yourself. The way you stopped needing them to get it. They thought you'd spiral. You didn't. They thought you'd break. You built. And now, they're the ones unraveling, quietly, privately, painfully, because they expected distance, but not detachment. They were ready for silence, but not serenity. They were prepared for no contact, but not the version of you who no longer needs closure to move forward. You became the storm by choosing stillness, and that stillness is what's breaking them. If this episode hit home, it's time to step deeper into your power. Comment the mantra below: peace is my revenge, growth is my glow. Let them watch you evolve, without an invitation to join you. Like this video to support what we're building. Subscribe and turn on notifications, because the rest of Volume 4, it's going even deeper. And if you want exclusive breakdowns and bonus content, join the Ace Wisdom channel membership. Links in the description. You think they're fine. You think they've found someone else. You think they've left you behind completely. But what if I told you the new connection is a distraction? The silence is strategy. And behind the scenes, your avoidant ex is falling apart quietly, destructively, and irreversibly. In episode 21, we're diving into the post-detachment breakdown, what really happens after they pretend to move on, and why they can't actually bond with someone new until they face the damage they did to you. You do not want to miss this.